Hey everyone, welcome back to another product demo session, expert session. I'm joined here by SqlDBM. Please introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Serge Gershkovich. I'm Product Success Lead at SqlDBM, and we're an online database modeling and metadata management tool. So we're going to be looking at exactly what modeling is in the modern sense of the word, of the data stack, how it plays a role in decision making, and how it should be an integral tool of everyone's both business vernacular, business practice, and toolkit.
All right, okay, let's hit it off.
Okay, let's do it. So, before we get into the tool itself, I just wanted to talk about modeling in general and what it is. So, when people traditionally think of modeling, they're thinking about these arcane diagrams, and they're thinking of a specific profile, typically data engineer or data architect. But modeling, again, as a model, is a simplification of something. So as a simplification, it really should be something that plays a role in making your life, your job easier. Planning, decision making, breaking things down, and then serving as a blueprint for later designs. So it's really something that most people, when they think of as technical, it's really something that starts with the business process itself. And what the business does, usually every business has a motto that drives kind of the company ethos, the company culture. Then that motto translates into their operations and what they do day to day. And what they do day to day generates data. And that data is that now when we're starting to get into the technical semantics, how do we store it? How do we serve it to our users? And more importantly, what questions do we ask of it? Because that's going to drive, those business questions are going to drive the actual design decisions of how we present that data, how we structure it, how we transform it, and then how we do analysis based on those transformations. And afterwards, there's also metadata, the data quality, the freshness, and logs that, again, are part of one larger data model, end to end. There's nowhere where you can stop and say, this isn't a data model or this isn't part of modeling. So this is where it actually happens.
Is this a chronological, or not a chronological, but a sort of dependent setup here, so that this part is dependent on the part before it, or can you approach this sort of at any stage of this hierarchy?
Yeah, I think initially there's straightforward. It kind of does happen top down. You can't analyze data of what you sold before you've sold anything. You can't sell anything before you decide you're in the business of selling. But once you start going, that's where I think you're referring to, like that. Then it becomes a loop of you generate business operations, those generate data collateral, that data collateral gets analyzed, decisions are made of, are we selling enough, are we not, do we need to reduce customer churn, decisions are made based on that, and then you reevaluate of, are those decisions having the right effect or impact that we intended, and that's where the loop kind of starts to get going, but it obviously has to start somewhere.
I don't want to hijack your presentation too much, but I think this is more profound than the listeners might realize, because this first step here, a lot of times is unspoken or implicit, and then when you do business as usual, you have processes and other things that have a lot of details in them, and like maybe they're supposed to model a business or a business model or like a vector, where you're headed.
Exactly.
But when it's not formalized, you can't capture all the things that are necessary to do the modeling that you're aiming to do. So this first conversation here, as a first step, is often skipped, and I think that leads to a lot of problems, right?
A little bit. So, like I said, a model is a simplification. So if you're heads down in a design decision, do we increase production? Do we increase the footprint of our factory? Is the answer yes or no? I don't know. You don't know. Right. What if I tell you that our business model, the logos of our company is to increase humanity's adoption of green resources? Do you know the company I'm talking about?
Not necessarily.
It's Tesla.
Okay, there we go.
So it's those kind of simplifications of let's take a step back and say, what are we actually doing here? Is this going to increase our consumption of resources and adoption of green technology, or is it going to consume energy? So
That sounds like something measurable also, if just I might observe about that in particular. And we had a woman here sitting before from IKEA that was saying that their ethos is to provide affordable furniture. So there's a measurability in that kind of an ethos as well. Would you say measurability is necessary in order to formulate this first step then?
yeah, it's knowing which questions to ask and then building the right metrics around those. Because again, how do you measure adoption? How do you measure your productivity or the impact you're having?
That's a valid exercise though.
Yeah, I mean, you have to kind of know where you're going, and then also how, the SMART, SAMRT methodology of tracking and making sure you're hitting those goals.
If you don't know what SMART metrics are, SMART, not like Homer, SMART. Yeah, if you don't know what SMART metrics are, look them up. It's a top tier tool, I'd say.
Yeah.
All right.
So let's jump forward. Kind of building off of that previous slide, this would be the business process that you were saying. Does it happen in a top-down way? And this is kind of the simplification of we start with the business and we start generating data. We can't do analysis on the operational platform, so we bring it into a data warehouse. Once we transform it, we're able to ask the right questions. We're able to draw some dashboards to bring those into context. And then those dashboards tell us up or down, make a decision, are we doing good or bad? But let's go take a step back and say, actually, we didn't understand the business model when we decided to build our data model on top of it. So simple things, are our customers up or down? Are we churning or are we gaining? We produced a very pretty dashboard and we said customer churn is up. Our executive knows what to do with that, so he's dedicating resources or money to a different department or to prevent other churns from happening. Because of a dashboard that was made that was visualizing some very pretty graphics, and those graphics are based on business formulas and models, based on data that's in the warehouse. But if we go all the way back, we didn't understand that, for example, a customer is someone who registers on a platform, not necessarily has to buy something, just register. So now we're reporting, when we built our actual operational data, we put the wrong formula in place, because it's not that there's a mistake, we just didn't understand the model. And everything else, it doesn't matter how well we build our dimensions, our facts, how clearly we then draw our visualizations, just the underlying assumptions are wrong. And this is something that's very easy to pin and visualize and detect before you add all this complexity of reporting and warehousing and ETL movement, just a simple diagram of a relationship and a cardinality of one-to-many, one-to-one, etc.
You get the impression from these discussions here that the main problem is type checking, that the date is formatted incorrectly or something like that. When people talk about data quality, but the data quality you're talking about happens at a much earlier stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Data quality, I think, is way downstream of you've already got something in place, you've got a data model in place to load data into. So there's levels to it, obviously. So modeling generally starts with a conceptual model that's very simple to understand. It's just boxes and lines, entities and relationships. From conceptual, because it's so simple, a lot of times you don't even have attributes at a conceptual level. You can just validate, like what we just explained. Here's our definition of customer, and a customer, when they make an order, it can have multiple items. Is this correct, business domain expert? Please tell me. Because it's much easier to change a single line than it is to unload data, reload, change your assumptions, change your formulas. So this is how it's a process that builds on itself. So if you've validated the conceptual, we can move on to logical. And logical, we can now start capturing some of those attributes. Capturing, when I say that, I mean you and I having conversations, because as a data expert, as the business, as a data team, as the engineer, I don't know what necessarily are the business rules of my organization. The business know that better than anyone, the domain experts. And only through their help am I able to at least capture the underlying concept of what is an active customer. That way I can go off and build it. I've got my blueprint that we can call a logical diagram, and then I can go off and turn that into a physical implementation in a physical data model that's now database specific, that I can now work with and load data into before, again, mistakes that are made up here are 80% more expensive to fix than they are 20% earlier down the line. So this is what we're really driving at, of how do we do this and do it effectively. So I wanted to quickly just show what it looks like in SqlDBM and the approach that we took to modeling in general, which is we are an online database modeling tool, so it's all cloud native, cloud hosted. There's no infrastructure to maintain, no servers, no patches. If you have a browser and an internet connection, you can log in and work with your models. Because it's cloud-based, you can just add an email address of one of your colleagues and start collaborating instantly, nothing to install. And everything's hosted by us, different database types, different, all these versions that you're seeing here, these are version controls of the models themselves, completely hosted, and it also makes it very easy for us to integrate with other cloud-native data platforms like Databricks, Snowflake, Google BigQuery is coming next month. We're really excited about that one. And in fact, if I start a project from scratch, so we also do support on-premise databases, so all we really need is the DDL, so whether you do that via Direct Connect or you upload a file, it's just the metadata that we're interested in. It's very lightweight. But let's say if I was going with Snowflake, because it's cloud to cloud, I can just quickly connect to Data Warehouse. All I need is my server and username. Whoops. I don't know why my this thing is coming. It's not letting me type for some reason. Yeah. For some reason, my keyboard's gone crazy.
Okay.
Technical difficulties aside, let's just skip this step. My mouse still works, so let's just look at an existing project. Let's go back to the dashboard, hopefully.
Did you switch to Dvorak? I use Dvorak sometimes when I do that.
I hope not.
It really
I
messes
hope not.
with things.
I think it's either something stuck on my keyboard or something's interfering. If I'm using a Dvorak keyboard, then there's no.
That is
all
odd. That
hope
doesn't
is
look
lost.
like it should bring up a browser. So it
No.
seems like there's something with the browser.
Let me disconnect. Maybe it's the HDMI. No. Okay.
If you try another
technical
browser, does that work?
Let's see. No, it's my keyboard. I can't type. It's not the browser. Let's go with Edge.
Oh man, I've done so many demos where things have screwed up.
Well, exactly. I mean,
That,
it has to screw up on a demo, otherwise it wouldn't be a demo.
It wouldn't.
Okay. I think we might be.
All right, we're getting there, guys. Can we plug in the HDMI again?
Sure.
It's fine.
Okay, I think we're back in business.
Back in business. All right, sweet.
All right, so logged into Snowflake finally. This should have been the easiest part of the demo, but here we are. These are the data warehouses in my account. I can take a look and explore my schema. So we're just going to do a quick demo, spin up something existing that we can look at. And we're connecting to an actual data warehouse and getting the DDL. We're going to just spin up a couple of diagrams to have something to show. Once we hit upload, we parse those objects into things that the project recognizes, hit import. Let's also do an auto layout.
This is a setup that has been created outside of SqlDBM, right? So you're just looking from a schema perspective from the outside. So somebody can be managing this Snowflake setup completely independently of what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've just created in a few clicks is the visual ER model of our
Oh my God!
database.
I wish this. I asked for this stuff.
As
They're
an
like,
engineer,
we
right?
might have it in a drawer somewhere on a piece of paper that somebody a diagram that somebody printed millions of years ago. I hope this is what I think it is.
It is what you think it
description.
is. Yes, it is what you think it is. And what I'm bringing in has a lot of the due diligence already in place. So these constraints, these are physical constraints from the database. That means somebody has done their homework and actually defined how these things relate to each other. If that was not the case, we can still infer these just based on some very simple naming conventions of include, what do my keys include? Key, ID, PK, etc.
Right.
Do I want to exclude name, date, amount? So I can generate these on the fly, detect where these exist, create these virtual relationships, and get up and running, even if my data architect was sleeping at the wheel and didn't declare these for me. And the important thing now is what I was saying earlier of having a clear representation of what it is that our business represents. So here, presumably this is a warehouse, so it's taking data from the operational system. So all of these things are, again, we're talking top down. But the idea behind doing this thing in the cloud and natively in a browser is to make it accessible. So you're an engineer, I'm an engineer, we understand these types of diagrams. But even as an engineer, you might want to scale down the complexity, just for example, explore relationships, ignore attributes, or show this to our business users in something that they can understand, which is just boxes, lines, descriptions, and without having to really convert anything. I'm still looking at the same physical database, same physical tables, so I can click in and edit these descriptions. I can see the underlying columns. I can go all the way as abstract to in table mode if I wanted to, and still see underlying columns and attributes. So if I was working top down, if I was just working kind of a whiteboarding an idea, I can, as we were saying earlier, start easy, just start with the entities, talk to you about the relationships that they share or don't share, and work my way up. So this, we're just...
And I'm thinking, because there are some tools that are a little bit similar to this, not bundled with the databases, certainly, but that some databases have tools that go with them that can do this kind of stuff. What is the advantage of using SqlDBM here? The thing that pops in my mind now, obviously, is that you can apply it to all the databases. So that's nice. You don't have to have one tool per database. What other things are nice about SqlDBM compared to some of these simpler tools that others have used to make like UML diagrams and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, great question. It's really, like we said in the beginning, we are a database modeling and metadata management tool. So as you said, you might be working in a larger type of organization that has different databases, different data teams, data domains, so you can have unlimited projects and unlimited data diagrams of the different database you're working with, letting users access them all from one place. But let me jump into a project that's been a little bit more...
Does that mean if I have one conceptual setup that makes use of a SQL server and an Oracle server, that I can, with this, combine them into one diagram that shows the conceptual relations across them?
Yeah, you can do that. I mean, our projects are database specific, so you can have a generic project that you can use as your logical base, and then you can convert that to Oracle or to Snowflake and generate them, because obviously there are going to be some differences when you physically implement them. But yeah, you can do it that way, and a lot of our customers do. So especially if you're dealing with like a data mesh type of scenario, or if you're an IT services company that has kind of a blueprint that you like to roll out to different customers, you can convert that to any database type and then just start tweaking the little fine details. So in this project, this is the same data model. It's just been a little bit more advanced. So this version number up here, every time we make a change to our project and we save, we generate a revision. So we have now version control. We have the ability to roll back.
Wow, that's nice.
Compare, and
is that something you do in the tool, or does it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you versioned this setup, and somebody changes something in the database. They add a column, or they change maybe a type and then rewrite the column or whatever. How is that reflected here? What happens?
What happens is you would be able to first, let's go ahead and compare revisions just so you see what it looks like. So right now I'm on almost version 900, so any two revisions could be compared. So the last time I was in here, I added a column, I created a table from scratch, I deleted these other tables, and this is just for me as information. So I can go and see who actually did it, which developer, was this part of a release, we can flag these things.
Would you want to tie your analytical code to versions of the schema?
Absolutely.
So you can say my SQL query is designed to work with Sprint v896 or something like that?
Yeah, because all of these things happen hand in hand. So transformational is the fourth type of modeling that happens after you've got logical, conceptual, logical, physical. Then you start writing your queries. So I can't query a column that doesn't exist. So you obviously want to keep everything in sync, and once you start doing these transformations and creating like an aggregation, let's say, you also want to bring that back into your overall picture of now you have a transformation creating another table, but you want to bring that table back and say there's actually a relationship here. It might not be a constraint type of relational relationship. It's a transformational relationship based on logic, based on business questions.
Yeah.
So all of these things that we're kind of driving towards is, and just save this project, is like what you were saying. We can visually see that something changed. We saw what changed. We can now generate an alter script of those changes, so we can bring that into our database. So we have alters, creates, drops, anything that happened between any two revisions, or database. So right now we're comparing to the history of the project itself, but we can also compare to a live environment, or even environment to environment on the fly, and generate those alters. And I kind of want to jump into...
Well, there is one thing I would wish for, but I think it might be too much. I don't know if... Well, you guys probably can't do this, but it would be cool. And that would be if somebody is editing a table, that it would say that there is a conflict, and it wouldn't let you make that edit because you see here that there's a dependency on a certain column, and so you would first have to do a revision in the metadata management saying this change is coming, and so on, and so that they can make the change in the table, so that you don't break things by mistake by changing tables. And
that would be great. You'd kind of want to. I think we'll get there eventually. It's not something that we can do overnight. You're right, but that's kind of what we're aiming for. And just to finish up, I wanted to also make sure that, like you said, we're including these visualizations. We're including people in here that would generally not be included in the data modeling workflow, meaning the analysts, the engineers, that usually they're not the ones making the changes. They just want to come in here and find the data assets they're looking for. So there's a documentation screen where people can, for example, I'm looking for a Salesforce ID. I don't know which table it's in. I don't know the column it's called. It might have been renamed to customer ID. So from a single screen, we can search across object names, column names, even down to the description level, and say, okay, somebody, maybe one of our business analysts has come in here and said, this is...
Is this only in SqlDBM, or this comes from the outside, or this is part of SqlDBM metadata management?
No, this is not metadata. So this is, we just happen to be seeing it all in one place, but this is going to get re-injected right back into the database as DDL.
So it goes from SqlDBM back into the database. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly.
I love the idea that there's not an additional sort of data pool that starts building up that you need to manage, that this is just like a shim around what you already have, but it makes it accessible to different people.
Exactly. So we don't want to be a bottleneck. We want to, if it makes the access easier all from one place for someone that may be not as familiar with SQL and querying even metadata in a database, they can search it from here. Otherwise, it shouldn't just be kept here. It goes right back so that other BI tools can leverage all of this metadata, inform the queries based on the constraints, things like that, propose queries.
What's the easiest way for people to get started if they want to try it out themselves? I think it's good for people to give it a try. I sort of itching a little bit to try it on some scenarios myself.
Sure.
How should they get started?
Very simple. Go to SqlDBM.com, go to our website, and you can actually get started right from there. You can do a free trial, and it's an online tool, so there's nothing to install. You can just hit go and start playing with it.
With your own databases?
Yeah.
So it's not, so it's not even just a demo account. You can actually trial it on your own databases.
Yeah, exactly.
That's sweet.
That's the idea. So you can get a feel for the UI if you want a full trial of all the features, all the bells and whistles. Also from the website, just click Contact Sales. They'll set you up with also a free 2-week trial of all the functionality, so you can involve your broader team and get to know the tool. So yeah, unfortunately, we can't see everything in a single demo, so we encourage people to come check us out. And it's not just the relational stuff that we're doing. We're also expanding into column lineage, some of the logic, helping the same way we kind of break down visually how tables relate to one another and entities relate to one another. You can take a view, for example, and also understand the inputs and outputs, and
I have to say, legitimately, based on just the parts you've shown me, and I imagine there's more behind it, this is one of the more compelling tools that I've seen. A lot of the tools here are all sort of good, but this actually seems very useful immediately. So I appreciate the demo, and I hope this has piqued your interest. It seems easy to get started with. Go give it a try, and thanks for being with us today. There's only so much you can show in 20 minutes, but this was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thanks, and we'll see you soon on the main stage. Thanks everybody for joining. Have a good day.